live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. What the hell's going on here? Wait a minute. Hold it. 3 days after a federal election, and the Mounties lay serious criminal charges against 2 former Lavalin employees and Lavalin itself. What the hell's going on here? 3 days after the election? A coincidence? Do you believe that? I mean, this is unbelievable. The charges include forgery, conspiracy to commit forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and here's the one that I think is perhaps most revealing of all, fraud against the government. Now, this investigation relates to bribes given to various people in order to obtain contracts. So this indicates to me that if one of the charges is fraud against the government, that somebody in Lavalin attempted or perhaps bribed somebody in government. So somebody in government has got to be involved in this. I'm not saying necessarily that they accepted a bribe, although if the charge is fraud, not conspiracy, but also conspiracy, but there is a charge of fraud against the government. I mean, this stinks to high heaven. Forget something rotten in Denmark. There is something rotten in Canada involving, I believe, Justin Trudeau, the gang of ragtag ragamuffins that surround him, including some no longer there, and Trudeau and the RCMP. So, I mean, among the questions, and there are many questions this creates, and I'm sure you have a few questions of your own. At least I hope the hell you do. Okay, I mean, does this, what happened here? Did Trudeau get wind of this, the fact that charges were coming down, criminal charges, against his dear friends in Lavalin? Did he get wind of this? And as a consequence, decided to hold what can only be described as a very rushed election campaign, 36 days? Or did he pressure somehow or other the RCMP into withholding these charges until after the election? I have no proof that either of these things happened. But once again, folks, I mean, at the very least, you've got to be suspicious. Now, I have no idea whether, if we knew about these charges being laid against Lavalin before the election, whether it would have affected the results of the election or not. We don't know. But I'm going to tell you this, that finding out that Jody Wilson-Raybould was absolutely correct all along in fighting Trudeau. Don't forget that Trudeau, all of this thing involving Jody Wilson-Raybould involved Trudeau's attempt to have lesser charges laid against Lavalin. In other words, to let Lavalin off the hook. Jody Wilson-Raybould said no. The RCMP must be left alone to pursue criminal charges. I am the Attorney General. I am not going to be involved in any way in interfering with a criminal case involving the RCMP. But as you know, and you know for sure, that Trudeau did his best to influence her. He wanted her to step in, create this new charge, which would have, as they say, essentially pushed most penalties against Lavalin under the carpet, and these criminal charges would never have occurred. So among other questions, and as I say, I repeat, there are so many questions here. I know that I have. Is this one of the reasons that Trudeau was so desperate not to have Lavalin go to court, not to have criminal charges laid against Lowell? Was it because someone in his government that he knew accepted a bribe? Why? I think at the time, most of us asked that question. Why is he so determined, even at the risk of losing his own government, why is so determined not to allow Lavalin to go to court? He did not want those criminal charges pressed. Was it because he knew that somebody in his government, perhaps in his own office, had accepted a bribe in order to give a contract? Is that why? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, it sure as hell raises the questions, among many other things. And it's sad, it's tragic. I mean, the Mounties, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are Canadian icon. When other countries think of Canada, even today, they still think of the Mountie, the Redcoats. It's symbolic with Canada. And at the very least, this decision to lay these charges 3 days after the election raises all kinds of red flags concerning the Mounties. And that's sad. In fact, it's dangerous because when we lose faith, when we lose trust in the law system, particularly our national police force, it's sad. It's more than sad, it's dangerous. Really the only way a civil society can continue, democracy can continue successfully, is if we have trust in the institutions that govern us, including the institution of law, the system of law. But if we believe or even have serious suspicions that somehow or other political influence dictated the timing of this announcement, then this is very, very damaging. We deserve a lot of answers here, folks. Now, if history is any judge, we know that Trudeau will once again try to stuff this under the carpet, try to dance around it, etc., etc. I'll bet you dollars to donuts. I mean, the pressure is on for him to recall Parliament so that they could deal with the pandemic. But I'll bet you dollars to donuts he's going to do everything he can to stall recalling Parliament. He doesn't want to have to stand in Parliament and answer questions about this. Not that he ever would answer. John, what are people thinking out there? I am very, very disturbed to think that the integrity, the trustworthiness of our Royal Canadian Mounted Police is at the very least in question. I find very, very disturbing, very dangerous for my country. The fact that somebody in government may have been accepting bribes in order to hand out contracts also I find very, very disturbing. And the fact that we have a prime minister who did everything he could to hide this, to shove this under the carpet. I mean, folks, I asked at the outset, what the hell is going on? What do you think is going on? John, got some texts coming in yet?
A lot of outrage already. Our number
I
here
hope
is...
so. I hope that some of you people finally get mad. 48% of you didn't bother enough to even show up at the polls. I hope now you realize what's going on in this country. I don't like it one little bit. Go ahead, John.
This is the thing. I wonder, is anybody even paying attention? Do they even give a damn?
Well,
it scares the hell out of me that many people just don't seem to pay attention, Lowell. But here we go. 613-413-2217. Lowell, it's obvious that Trudeau has bought the RCMP and that these charges were not pursued before the election. All the prosecution has to do is follow the money. Okay, after 5 weeks of treating conservatives unfairly, writing fake news stories, misrepresenting O'Toole's positions, repeating liberal talking points, pushing Trudeau's wedge issues, and generally vilifying conservatives, many in the legacy media have suddenly had a change of heart. Now that the election is over, they're urging conservatives to keep Aaron O'Toole as their leader. Why? Well, because O'Toole lost that, and he pulled the party to the left. That's exactly what legacy media journalists want in a conservative politician.
Okay, can we get onto the topic here, please?
There we go.
This,
sure.
No, I'm glad you read that, but I'm simply saying, come on, folks, let's deal with the issue here today, okay? This is very, very serious. Our national police force is under suspicion. I think the government of Canada is under serious suspicion here. Surely some of you have got to care about this. If you don't, then you know what? I've got several other topics. I'll move on. If you don't care about any of this, then just don't comment. Go ahead, John.
No, they care. That's just me reading them as they come in.
Okay, fair enough.
Ann says RCMP has some explaining to do. Joshua is on Facebook. If the charges were laid 3 days later, when did we know, and why did it not come out before or during the election, he asks. Stephen McGilvery says, we need to talk about Bill 96. You were a Quebec resident once. Let me see. Cheryl says, is this why Trudeau met with reporters privately in an off-the-record meeting? Helen says, this is no coincidence. I'm so fed up with so much scandal with this government. Total embarrassment for Canada. Doug is on Facebook saying, but really, with the history of this government, would it have made any difference? I don't think so. Nothing sticks to this prime minister. Let me see. Peter, RCMP is fully being controlled by Trudeau and his fat cat Trudeau government and postpone it till after the election. Perhaps this and other reasons is why the election was held earlier before the latest scandal hit. And no doubt more scandals are about to come up in Trudeau land. Another comment says, this thing stinks worse than a flying fox fart. Tom says, another Trudeau scandal involving the RCMP. And Stephen, Hillary had suspicion on her before the U.S. election, and look what happened to her. Some of the comments coming in on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Twitter for you.
I'd like to know if you have suspicions about the RCMP. Do you have a suspicion that the RCMP has allowed itself to fall under political influence? Do you believe this announcement 3 days after the election is a direct consequence of pressure applied by Trudeau? Or do you think that perhaps Trudeau got wind of this, and this is the reason that he decided to hold what we can only call a really hurried up election, so that this would be over and done with before this news came out? What's your feeling? What role do you think the RCMP has played here? Because if in fact there is direct political influence on our national police force, this is a very serious matter. What about the bribes? I mean, the whole investigation concerns bribes to various people in order to obtain contracts, including definitively fraud against the government. In other words, bribes with the government. I can only assume that we are referring here to the Canadian government. Does that concern any of you here? And maybe we should ask the question, in light of all of this, why in the hell did the city of Ottawa contract Lavalin to be involved in light rail? So any of these folks, I have another topic here, but if you've got any more thoughts on this, I find this very, very disturbing. But I may be alone in this. I don't know.
No, you're not.
Okay.
Oh, we got a ton of comments. Over on Twitch, S&C Lavalin charges, timing just doesn't pass the smell test. Chrissy says, the timing, definitely something fishy going on here. I agree, Lowell. What the heck is going on, and how is this going to be resolved, and will it change things? Melanie says, are these lesser charges laid? Could there be more serious charges coming somewhere?
Wait a minute, hold it. These are very serious. These are criminal charges.
They are.
These are very, please.
But she's asking if these are lesser, could there be bigger charges?
Well, I don't know how you're going to have more serious, unless it's murder, than fraud and forgery. These are criminal offenses. Bribing a government official, etc., etc. These are criminal offenses. These are offenses for which people go to jail for a long period of time if found guilty. So I just wanted to get that out. These are serious charges, folks. Okay, go ahead, John. You have more emails coming in here.
We do just sort of reading and compiling as we go here, Lowell,
okay.
So bear with me. Larry says, lost confidence when the RCMP searched houses in High River looking for guns, and no one has ever had to answer for it. That's Larry from Alberta. Carrie says, very disturbing. Did he ask RCMP to delay the charges till he had the election and got a majority, which of course didn't work out too well for him? Are you concerned? Stephen answers very simply, yes. Angela, the RCMP has been in bed with the Liberal Party for years. The RCMP is as corrupt as the FBI, have lost all confidence in both. And an email from Rob in Carleton Place, Trudeau has already shown us that he has no regard for an independent prosecution. Why should we believe he has any regard for independent police force? He runs the country like a communist, not a Democrat. And the comments continue to pour in. Keenan says the average duration of minority governments in Canada is 479 days, or approximately 1 year. Long before the announcement was actually made, sorry, it just moved up on me. Long before the announcement was made, everyone from the baristas on Spark Street to student journalists were saying there would be a fall election. SNC and LRT, says Peter. Notice how many Liberal-led cities have LRTs? And Joseph says, time for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to dismount. Canadians have been mounted enough by these corrupt so-called police.
Let me jump in here. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I suspect that Jody Wilson-Raybould, while she didn't have definitive proof, had high, what I would call very serious doubts as to exactly what Trudeau was trying to do here. That's why I think she stuck to her guns. She realized that there was something very serious. Whether she suspected that there had been bribes or attempted bribes against government officials, I do not know. But she was very adamant in telling Trudeau and others, Privy Council chair, you remember, and telling them, no, I am not going to interfere. Now, I want to point out, just as further evidence that perhaps she knows more than she really can say, she, after just in fact within the last couple of weeks, during the election campaign, Jody Wilson-Raybould urged Trudeau to let the RCMP carry out an investigation into obstruction of justice. This is concerning Lavalin. So it's clear to me that somehow or other, Jody Wilson-Raybould must have had what I would call high suspicion, serious suspicions, that this involved some illegal action in the government. And that is why Trudeau worked so hard, was so desperate to keep this hidden. I'm just throwing out some thoughts here, but you have to examine what's been said here. Nobody was closer to this than Jody Wilson-Raybould. She was the Attorney General. She had followed this case against Lavalin very, very carefully. So as far as I am concerned, I think that she suspected that something was going on involving, because at the time, don't forget that there had been bribery charges against people in Lavalin involving bribing the government of Libya. But this new investigation says bribing the government, which I believe involves bribing the Canadian government. Yes, I've got to get a word in here. First of all, I'm going to ask my wife, Debbie, please don't crash the dishes. I can hear the dishes all over the place. Oh, my goodness.
I actually thought it was upstairs here. So.
Oh, you thought it was there.
I thought it was here.
One of the joys of broadcasting from your own home.
Is what it is, right?
When my wife gets out in the kitchen, God help us all, dishes fly all over the place.
I love it.
Shields, I've got to get a word in here for Shields. Once again, I have to apprise you of the fact that many of the lower-priced appliances probably will not be available at all come the new year. And if they are, they're going to be much more expensive. The Government of Canada has decreed that as of January 1st next year, all new appliances sold in Canada must be the Energy Star level, which means that they're going to be much more expensive. This is the Energy Star is the upper echelon, sort of the Cadillac of appliances. And today, for example, about 75% of fridges do not comply with Energy Star. So if they have to, you can be very sure that they will not be available. The message here from Shields is this. Listen, if you need an appliance or think you'll need some appliances, please get them now. The prices are bound to escalate considerably. Not only will the prices go up, but it may very well be many of these products, these appliances, will not be available. Thank you, Trudeau. More texts coming in. John, yes, please.
Debbie getting a lot of love in the comments on Facebook right now. People getting a real kick out of that. Back to our topic at hand. 613-413-22.
I presume you could hear the dishes crashing, right?
Oh, clear as day. Oh, yes. It sounds like she's putting the cutlery away.
I have no idea.
Sorry, Lowell, I wasn't going to text because this is so normal to have these allegations against the Liberals that I can't be upset any longer. They wore me out. Canadians don't give a shit. Vote him back in. The RCMP do work for Trudeau. Talk to Ezra. It's all bullshit, he says. Angela says the head of the city, Watson, is Liberal through and through, lining the pockets of their Liberal friends. People are so fed up and just don't care as people feel they just can't actually do anything. You vote, but does not change anything. Cheryl says, if we don't wake up, we won't have a Canada left. We are the laughing stock of the world stage. It's so bad. The USA says we are not their closest ally anymore. And Lisa says the government expects us to all shut up, never complain, never be suspicious. We're all supposed to accept whatever the Liberal government dishes out. So sick of them. I'm very sick of this SNC crap and all the other debacles Trudeau winds up involved in. Some of the comments on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter, etc., etc.
I have another topic here that's also important. This question: do we have to change our electoral system to provide a more accurate picture of the voters' will? For the second election in a row, you know what happened. The Conservatives won the popular vote, this time by about 800,000 votes. O'Toole got about 800,000 more votes than did Trudeau, the Liberals. But you know what happened. The Liberals won because of the what I would call gerrymandering of the various ridings. Here is the problem, and everybody knows it, and that is that essentially votes in Toronto count more than votes, let's say, in Calgary or Edmonton or Regina or even in Vancouver for that matter. It's a hard concept for me to explain, but I think most of you understand. It's because let's use the figure of 1,000. In other words, if it takes 1,000 people to comprise a riding in Toronto, in downtown Toronto, then in Calgary it would probably take 120 or maybe 130 people to comprise, or 1,000. I'm sorry, 1,300 to comprise that same riding. So that's why there's a disproportionate number of ridings, particularly in Montreal, particularly in Toronto, and to a degree in Vancouver. But it's primarily Toronto. The vote in Toronto, a vote in Toronto counts for far more than a vote in Calgary, Regina, Edmonton, etc. This has got to change. I don't know the best system. We've had the first past the post for some time. Trudeau promised that he was going to change it. He did not. The reason he did not is because it favors the Liberal Party. There's no question about it. I mean, most of the Liberal support rests in the center of these major cities, and in the center of these major cities you will find that the votes count more than they do elsewhere. So it seems to me that one of the ways to remedy this, to make it much more fair, would simply to say, listen, every riding has got to contain a certain number of voters. Let's take 100,000 as an example. So every riding has got to have 100,000 voters, or very close to it. Then that would create equality. That would create fairness. If any of you have any thoughts in this regard, or any ideas as to what we could do here, but very clearly this system has got to change, because I'm going to be very honest. As more and more immigrants come to this country, they tend to vote Liberal. They tend to settle in the center of these major cities, and they tend to vote Liberal. So it's going to become more and more difficult for anybody but Liberals to run the country. And as we see from today's news concerning Lavalin, this can be very dangerous. It weakens the opposition. It lessens the opposition. And by the way, this includes not just the Conservatives, but the other parties. It lessens their ability to hold a government to task. We saw when Trudeau had to answer some very tricky questions concerning he simply prorogued Parliament. He shut Parliament down. You stop all your questions when you don't have Parliament sitting. Any thoughts on that or anything else, folks? Yes, John, we have some more text coming in.
Stephen says, I know how we can change the electoral system. We make Toronto a separate nation. He laughs at that. Let me see. We've got some other comments.
Can I have some news for you? It is a separate nation.
It really is. It's interesting, too, that you would mention, per 100,000. I have long said that, and to hear you say it makes me feel, smarter than I gave myself credit for. Thank you.
I'm just saying, before I go further, I'm just using the 100,000. I mean, maybe it's 200,000. But whatever it is, it should be roughly the same in all ridings.
Yes. Wholeheartedly agree and have for a long time on that.
Okay.
Dana says ridings in Toronto should be amalgamated. Over on Twitch, we need term limits is one of the comments there. Peter says O'Toole should be going after Trudeau on SNC and the raw corruption. Lisa says, yes, Lowell, we need to change the electoral system. Cheryl says, yes, the electoral system needs to be changed. Peter adds, change the system and also need an elected Senate or get rid of it entirely. Another Stephen is on Facebook. He says the bloc should not be allowed to run in the federal parliament unless they run.
Yeah, let's deal with
ridings.
let's deal with the issues here. Okay, we have two issues. Have you lost trust and faith in the RCMP? Do you believe that Trudeau engineered this, that somehow his greasy hand is involved in this delaying the announcement of the charges? And the second issue is, do we need to change the electoral system? Those are my questions today. We can deal with other stuff on other days. Go ahead, John, please.
Under our current electoral system, it's frankly impossible to hold Trudeau to account on anything, says Cheryl. Joseph, the voting should be proportionate to the population. Why would Trudeau change a system that keeps him in office, asks Lisa. Barry at 613-413-2217 says, Lowell, when some of the top RCMP were found stealing money from the RCMP pension plan, whatever happened to them? It was hushed up, no dirt to be cleaned up in the courts. Let me see. Scrolling up here, we've got lots and lots of comment. Lowell, I'm just trying to get my mouse to cooperate. There we go. Todd says, first past the post is still the best option. Gregory says, maybe the office of Prime Minister could function more like a president insofar as the...
Yeah, let me just jump in there. Okay, just a minute. The first past the post may be fine, but surely you must agree that a vote in Toronto should not count more than a vote in Calgary.
Absolutely.
That's all I am saying. First past the post would be fine if there was roughly the same population in every single riding. And I mean, that would be relatively easy to do. It just makes no sense that 100,000 people in a Toronto riding get to elect a member, but in Calgary it would take 130 or 140,000 people to elect that member. That's why the Conservatives get more popular votes but get fewer seats. It's very clearly it's because it doesn't take as many people to vote a Liberal as it does to vote in a Conservative. Go ahead, John, please.
On Twitch, Ken says regarding Lavalin, it would mean that Trudeau and the RCMP knew this for months, sometime between his original statement of we don't want a COVID election and dropping the writ. Let me see. We've got an email that just came in seconds ago. We have very divided regions. Canada is not a country with a united bond anymore. I think Quebec has shown us the answer: decentralization. Let me see. Let me get over to my comment section here. Lowell, sorry, working with a new system, just trying to find my way through it. Here we go.
No problem.
Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke elects Cheryl Gallant by a landslide every time. It doesn't matter what she does or says. Democracy is messy. People who ride bicycles in Toronto really aren't the biggest problem with Canada. And as some listeners are suggesting, the PM doesn't participate at all in determining what the ridings are.
Well, wait a minute. Hold it. We're talking about fairness here. And yes, the Prime Minister does determine. The Prime Minister is the one who can say, we are going to change the electoral system. As a matter of fact, prior to the 2015 election, he said he would do exactly that. He said, you recall, come on, all you Liberals, he said this will be the last election with the first past the post. Well, very clearly, he looked at it and saw, hey, this provides a definite advantage to the Liberals, so I'm not going to change it. So yes, the Prime Minister is in a position to make the change. So come on, folks. You know what? I've been around the horn for so long, looked at this so carefully, it's pretty hard to get this kind of crap past me. Go ahead, John.
Yes, voting is skewed in both municipal and federal. In the municipality, the larger amount of inner city voters affect the suburbs since there are more of them. We do need to change the system. It should be proportionate. Cheryl says, agreed, the Prime Minister should only be limited to 2 terms. And Keenan fires back saying the PM doesn't tell Elections Canada what to do with the ridings. That's his point.
Excuse me, I just gone through this. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. That's why he said prior to the 2015 election, this will be the last election with the first past the post. Parliament, and Parliament is dictated by this Prime Minister very clearly, Parliament can change the electoral system. So let's please get that out there, okay? The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is responsible for this. All right. I'll tell you somebody else that's very responsible out there, okay, and not involved in bribes or the Mounties or anything else. I'm talking about Centennial Glass. Good people. Let's see the graphic up here. I want to see those wine racks. Yes. Here's an example, folks. If you can see this, you'll see an example of some of the handiwork, beautiful work done by Centennial Glass. We've got wine racks or wine storage, whatever you call, and we got a beautiful glass shower. Just an example of some of the work that they do at Centennial Glass. These people, they specialize. I mean, glass is their business. Glass is them, okay? No matter what it is, windows, doors, patios, whatever it is, wine racks, wine storage, showers, mirrors, glass, and repairs, even screen repairs. Yes, they do it all. By the way, I haven't mentioned this, I don't think, for some time, and that is that Centennial Glass does not farm out the work. These are Centennial Glass employees that come to your house to install windows and doors. They take a lot of pride. These are Centennial Glass people, good people. CentennialGlass.ca. Yes, John.
A couple of last ones before we wrap up the show here. Canyon is back again to say you're talking about election reform, not who decides how the ridings are constructed.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's electoral reform. I don't know what you're talking about. The Prime Minister of Canada can decide that we are going to change the electoral system. And it can be some other system other than first past the post, or it can be first past the post, but with proportional representation. That's all we're saying here. God, these liberals, These liberals, they think that all of us conservatives are really, really, really dumb, that we really don't know what's going on. Well, sometimes we do. Thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.